Regular council meeting, April council meeting already, so welcome members of the public, and we've got some special guests here this afternoon. I acknowledge our iwi partners here with us today, and I believe Councillor Jill Day from Wellington City Council is here. Jill, you put your hand up. Nice to have you here, Jill. Thank you so much for traversing the country to get up here, and I believe you're from Ngāti Turangi-Tongariro descent, so it's lovely to have you here this afternoon. Also, other members of the public, members of the press, not the police, the press, staff, Deputy Mayor, Councillors, and Mr CEO. Right, just a couple of change arounds. We just have an urgent late item here, which is up there at the moment. But just before we get underway, just wondering, Councillor Kingi, would it be possible for a blessing for the day? Thank you, Councillor Kingi. Kia ora. Tai hiahia. Thank you very much, Kakati. Thank you, Councillor Kingi. And just acknowledge Councillor Mr. Clinton Green here, who is the chair of the Turangi-Tongariro Community Board. Lovely to see you here, Clint. All right, we have just a little change around, and we have some special guests today. So there's an urgent late item here, which Shaney's got up on the screen there. It's that recommendation of the KRG group amendment to be authorised operational hours for the kindy out there. I just need to move that. We'll discuss that item later on. Moved by Councillor Guy, seconded by Councillor Leonard. All those in favour, please say aye. It's against, carried. And a change around in the agenda items. So we'll bring 4.3 forward, and 4.1 will drop to the next item. So 4.3 is community feedback on the establishment of Māori wards. We have Mr. Dylan Taho with us this afternoon, and Sue Maver. Good afternoon, Sue and Dylan.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'll very briefly talk to the paper. You'll remember back in November last year that you passed a resolution to establish Māori wards for the 2022 elections. You'll also remember that in March this year, the legislation, the Local Electoral Act, was changed, and that took out the requirement to hold a binding poll. And it also allowed you a longer time frame to make a decision on whether or not to establish Māori wards. Now, obviously, you'd already made a decision in November, but it gives you the opportunity to, until the 21st of May, to reconsider that decision or reconfirm that decision. Back in May, at the meeting in May, you resolved to engage with the community to seek their views and opinions on the establishment of Māori wards while your November resolution remains. And your November resolution does remain at this point in time. Community feedback was opened after your meeting in March, not May. I'm ahead of myself. Back in March, it was open for 2.5 weeks, and the results of the feedback are outlined in my report, and you've all had access to that feedback. So you've seen the originals. You'll also remember that the council had discussions with iwi leaders and individuals from iwi and Māori entities. So most of that was last year, and that the feedback from those discussions was that the iwi would support a council decision to establish Māori wards. Today, you need to decide whether to reconfirm your November 2020 resolution to establish Māori wards for the 2022 local government elections. And in doing that, you need to take into account the requirements of the legislation and the feedback from the community and the feedback from the iwi leaders and Māori entities and organisations, all of which is clearly outlined in my report.
Very good. Thank you very much. Sue, nothing to add, Mr. Taho? pretty straightforward. Yeah. Very good. Thank you very much, Taho. Any questions or queries of Sue or Dylan here this afternoon? No? All finished. Councillor Taylor?
I'll start. First of all, I want to acknowledge all of those who have submitted both for and against and have taken the time to participate in this process. And I also want to state that I have read all of the submissions, both for and against. I also want to acknowledge the other information we've been provided, the legal opinions in relation to what the courts have said around council decision making. And I've read extensively outside of the submissions on some of the language that was used, and I've done my own background reading. I've formed an opinion and I've made a decision, having read all the information, and for the record, I'm in favour of the resolution remaining as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Any other
Your Worship.
queries? Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I endorse Councillor Taylor, and done a lot of the homework and done the research as well, and understand the local processes with consultation, and I respect that. But however, I just want to say, possibly either through misunderstanding or misinformation, there is a viewpoint within the local sectors of the local community that the formation of Māori wards is separatism and undemocratic, that they are not necessary, and some find it confronting. Personally, having engagement with all Māori at different levels of governance and committees, I see the value for the whole district with Māori ward representation at the council table, improving the democratic process, not compromising it. I see this as a relationship which will see positive outcomes benefiting the interest of all. We shouldn't find it confronting, but rather regarding it as being inclusive, recognising mana whenua. Thank you. So I support the resolution as stands.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Kathy Guy.
Kia ora. I also endorse both John Williamson and Kevin Taylor's comments with regards to those that submitted. I went into this process very much with an open mind. I had, in the very beginning, supported this, and after reading all of the information, I still hold the view that I would like to see Māori wards implemented. I think that Māori wards will bring huge value by adding a Māori worldview, which will assist us greatly in the future decisions in our diverse communities. It's never been so important in my mind as it is today, with the issues that we face over our environment and our regulatory impacts. I see this as a huge positive move, and I don't think that it is one that has been taken lightly. My expectation is that Māori will be included in and not just consulted on, and actually be at the forefront of every decision that is made at local government. And I am looking forward to that happening. So I also endorse the recommendation as it stands.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Any other councillors? Councillor Park.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The process around these Māori ward seats is not something that I have been in favour of at all, and is why I voted against originally. After speaking to colleagues this morning about, with Taupō we're lucky, we have diversity around the table, we have gender equality around the table, and a mix of ages and professions and a lot of different things, but one colleague did point out that surety around the table of representation is what we need, not anything else. So I will not be voting against the existing resolution. I'll be going with the majority.
Thank you, Councillor Park. Councillor Rankin.
I too have read all the information and done my research, and I've spoken before about why I'm not in favour of this. And I want to add to that that I see Maori as a proud and capable group of people as a whole in our nation, whose power and influence has grown and continues to grow. And now, as a registered member of Ngāti Maniapoto, and my grandchildren are affiliated to Ngāi Tahu, and having been a woman who developed her career during a time when women were given power because they were given it, and to be ever considered as a token woman at the time was something that horrified me and made most of the women who were carving a career at the time act in a totally different way than they should have had to. I don't want to see that happen, and I still believe passionately that this is the wrong thing for a group of people I have huge respect and admiration for. So I have not changed my mind, and I will be voting against.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Any other? Councillor Mack.
I do think it was right that we did go back for community feedback. I do think that it's really important that everybody has a say. Under the Turangi-Tongariro Community Board, nothing changed from the original vote. We still endorse the establishment of the Maori wards, and nothing has changed.
Thank you, Councillor Boddy. Sorry, Councillor Mack. Sorry, I was looking at Councillor Boddy. No. Councillor Westman. No. Oh, sorry.
I think it's been pretty clear. I've been in full support of this from the early commencement. I think our local community will be enlightened to have Mary at the table, and it is well overdue. I can't wait for it to happen, and I will be fully supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Westerman. Any other comments? Councillor Truman.
Yeah, I actually just want to acknowledge first all the feedback that we received, and it's good that people took the time to have their say. But I also just want to acknowledge around this table the support we have to establish this. Like it's really heartwarming, and for our whole district that, you know, we want this to happen, and the key people at this table see the benefits, see the value, and just want it to happen. It's I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Truman. Anyone else? Councillor Kingi.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'm very much like Councillor Westerman. I've been a big supporter, obviously, of seeing this come into place, and do want to acknowledge the effort that people have put in making submissions. I mean, I suppose, like anything in life, there are people that are well informed and understand something, and ones that may not have all the information. So I do take this as being one of those responsibilities that we have as elected members to help our community to understand, because sometimes some of their positions are born out of fear, out of assumptions, and a whole lot of things which are often not the case. So part of us having the courage to move in this direction and to set a course and to encourage our community to be part of it actually just makes sense. So I will still be supporting the recommendation that we retain the existing recommendation, and hopefully move our district forward. Thank you, mate.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kingi. Councillor Boddy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's interesting times. If we go back to that meeting in May, I think it was, when, November, wasn't it? The 23rd November, when the wards were supported, then the law allowed the community to go to a poll, which we're all familiar with, and that poll required a certain number of signatures, and it was a petition for a poll. It wasn't for or against, it was a petition for a poll. That petition received just on 1,800 signatures when 1,241 were required. But the next day, basically, central government took away the democratic right for that poll, and the poll then became a non-issue. this council then rightly went to the people and said for or against, to summarise very quickly, and 80% of the people said no. Now, I take on board what Mr Tahu has just said before. The links that this council has gone to in the nearly 7 years that I've sat around this table, I believe has been extraordinary. And I made the note down here, steps that we've already taken or about to. And one of the things I found very interesting was back in, I think, October-ish, after the last election, we went out to a marae and we gave an undertaking there that we would visit every marae in the district, which was 2 a month. That's passed, that's dropped through, and I was very surprised and concerned that that actually happened. So my mind has not changed. I think as a council we've gone to extraordinary lengths, whether it's Maori or any other section of this community, so I will be voting against.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Body. Oh, sorry, Councillor Leonard, or did you want to
I just wanted to refer back to Councillor Body's comments regarding visiting marae. At your discretion, Your Worship.
Sure. Yep, you want to do that now and then we'll go to Councillor Leonard.
Oh, just to note that that remains a priority for Council. Our commitment was 5 per year, 3 of those being part of our staff development and the other 2 for Council's meetings. In the first instance, our intention is to try and split amongst the district. Also, our issue is we have an austerity budget which prevents us being able to go out and participate fully. So while you don't have a catering budget, we're not going to be able to go to the marae to fulfil manaakitanga obligations, which would actually be an issue for us in working alongside our iwi partners to host the day and the kaupapa specifically, which is why we put a push pause.
Thank you.
Councillor Leonard. Thanks.
I wasn't going to pass comment today because I feel that we've had the discussion, we've been there, we were just re-ratifying our point. I have read all of the submissions, but the one thing that plays in my mind was a mum at our Taupo library with her little preschoolers who was approached to sign the petition, who then had to explain what the petition was about, and I don't want to see anything like that ever happen again under my watch. So I will be voting to stay with what we have on the table.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much, councillors. Yeah, and I've certainly not changed my mind. I believe this is another landmark day in our district that we're receiving today. So I wholeheartedly support all the speakers in favour of this resolution today. So the resolution is up on the board there. That we've received the feedback from the community, and the confirms number 2 confirms the establishment of Māori wards for the Taupō District in the 2022 local government elections. Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Kathy Guy. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? And would you like those recorded? Good. Yep. Cool. Thank you. You got that, Shane? The motion is carried. Thank you. Right, item 3.1. Item 3.1 is confirmation of the ordinary council meetings on the 30th of March 2021. Have I got any queries or questions on those minutes? Points of clarification? Moved by Councillor Kingy, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Park. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Yep. But then we moved in second. Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is the late item. We'll put on now. It's on the board there that council will adopt the Kinloch representative group recommendation. Therefore approves the variation of the licence occupied for Central Kids Kindergarten Trust. Kathy, did you want to talk to this one?
Yes, thank you. I did raise this as an item last month after our Kinloch representative group meeting. This certainly frees up the hall and also allows the kindergarten to operate longer sessions, which gives more security to the parents, etc., and great for our community. So I would certainly ask that the recommendation be accepted.
You happy to move that?
I would
Councillor
like
Kath?
to move that, please.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Williamson. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. 4.1, extension of the contract for the road marking. We have Mr. Dennis Lewis. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Your Worship, Councillors. Have here the report for the extension of the contract 1718 236 road marking 2018-21. I'll take the item as read. Just a couple of comments. It is a 3+1+1 contract, and this is seeking approval for the first +1 year.
Cool. Thank you very much, Dennis. Any questions or queries on the road marking? No. There's a recommendation there at 1 and 2 that we approve this. Do I have a move, please? Thank you, Councillor Kingy, seconded by Councillor Kapi-Guy. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Dennis. 4.2 is community feedback on the establishment, 2 new public road names, Whariwaka East. Mr. Scott Devonport. Sorry about that.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll take the item as read. Just a couple of points. As you know, any public roads require us to bring an agenda item to council. This is in the fast-growing Whariwaka East, or Ngā Ratou Estate as it's called. And as you can see, development's going so fast, we're having to bring road names to you quite quickly as well. So 2 new road names there, and there's also just an explanation in terms of the understanding of what the road names mean. Any questions?
Very good. What are the names again? Tutu?
Tutu Place and Mako Mako Place.
Maka Maka. Yep, cool. Very good. Councillor Kingy.
Just a question, just in relation to that. So I note in the paper it talked about the developer was encouraged to go back and work with local hapu around the selection of that. How do we verify actually that that's occurred? What's our process?
They through the chair, they provide us with that copy of that correspondence as evidence that the consultation has been undertaken.
Sure. Yeah. Very good. Okay, thank you very much, Scott. Anyone like to move that recommendation of Whariwaka? Moved by Councillor Westerman, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much, Scott. Item 4.4, replacement power of attorney for execution of deeds. Mr. Nigel McCaddy.
Standing in for Ella today. Yeah, so just a mechanical type item. There are certain requirements in the Property Law Act for signing of deeds. This is just to replace the existing deed we have, just to reflect changes in the senior leadership team. Simple as that, really.
Thank you very much. Moved by Councillor Park, seconded by Councillor Williamson. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. 4.5, feedback on the draft statements of intent. We have Mr. John Ridd. Afternoon, John.
Good afternoon. So this is the statements of intent have been through this council previously. I just want to highlight a little bit in the resolution there, which talks about some particular requirements on DGLT, Destination Grade 8 Taupō, and this is really as a result of feedback from working with our elected members with economic development portfolios, and really the desire to strengthen that relationship with DGLT, particularly in the current difficult environment. You'll see there's some commentary around the assessment of the board. We need to really that's really a statement. We need to understand actually what that assessment entails going forward. But that's part of it. Also the bi-monthly meeting with the Mayor and CEO to discuss their performance. And finally, the professional development. This has really been recognised both by our elected members, but probably more particularly the board. It's a fairly new board, about half of them are new, a new chair. So really developing their understanding, particularly in the environment where we have a government-funded destination management plan process being carried out at the moment. So really understanding how does the destination management focused change going forward. So that's probably the only big one I'd highlight. So I'll answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, John. Any questions of John? No, that's good. Resolution up there. All those organisations there. So confirm those. Could I have a move, please? Moved by Councillor Mack, seconded by Councillor Rankin. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Health and Safety 4.6 report. Michelle McKell. G'day, Michelle.
Good afternoon, everyone. Worship, councillors, Gareth. My report I do quarterly, so this report reflects the first quarter of 2021, and I take it that you've all read it, and if there's any questions or queries you'd like to discuss.
Very good. Any questions or queries on anyone?
Just very
Councillor
quick,
Body?
through you, Mr. Chairman, reading that report, there was a couple of issues. It looks like some of our problems are ageing infrastructure. Would that be correct? There was one was to do with the roof and...
Oh, that's a part of the Three Waters contract with just upgrade. So I wouldn't be one in position to comment on infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions regarding the report? Okay, thanks, Michelle. Can I have a mover, please, that we receive that report? Thank you, Councillor Guy, seconded by Councillor Williamson. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thanks, Michelle. 4.7, Ad Hoc Committee to consider submissions on the pedestrian malls proposal. Mr. Nick Carroll. Good afternoon, Nick.
Afternoon, Your Worship and Councillors. You're on a real run, so I'll try not to break that. This is this is very much a mechanical item. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Nick. Now we've got to decide something here, don't we? Who the members are. You got the names there? Who? Hey. Yeah. Sorry, Nick. I believe we conversed about this the other day. So any other councillors are more than happy to attend.
Most definitely.
More than welcome to attend, whether they're happy or not. I'm not too sure. But yeah. So that make that quite clear, because it'll be quite an interesting process. Councillor Leonard, did you have a question of Nick? Right? Yeah. Oh, have you? Okay. Cool. All right.
Well, Your Worship, thank you. As one of the four, I was, through the workshops, I was in two minds. Kept an open mind. I think it's probably logical to retain the four on that working steering group to hear the submission, so I'm willing to move the recommendation.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Kingy. You actually wanted to move it, didn't you? Sorry, I forgot about that. No final comments, Nick? When's the first submission? Meeting? Councillor Westman, did you say something?
When we discussed this the other day, I kind of went home over the weekend. I thought, oh, look, are we making the right call, just confining it to the 4 members? But because it is a huge decision to make, and it will be with us for many, many years. And I think as long as we stay in communication with the other councillors and keep them informed, there's a lot of work that's happening at speed, but there's a great group of experienced professionals behind that giving the advice. So I think we are actually getting the right information, and I think it's appropriate that recommendations put forward. So I've swung the other way again now.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's good. No change. Yeah, okay. Councillor Mack.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think you're right that 4 councillors is more than enough for this, because we obviously trust what you guys are going through. You've got all the technical people as well. All that would happen is you'd have more of us getting involved, when in theory you guys will tell us if you're not happy, and we'll go from there.
Right. All right. As I say, happy to agree with those comments, but every other councillor is more than welcome to attend, that's for sure. All right, thank you very much, Nick. I got to move in a second. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. Adoption of bundled suite of 2021 bylaws. At least it's not bungled, eh?
No, hopefully
No,
not.
no.
Hopefully not. Good afternoon, Your
Good
Worship,
afternoon.
councillors.
Nice to have you.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, this is hopefully the second to last chapter on this. And we've gone through the process of reviewing the bylaws over the last year. And last month, we brought it to council in December and you adopted it for consultation. Consultation happened over January and February. And the committee had hearings in March. And with recommendations that the bylaws be adopted as they are, with barring some minor changes which have been talked about in the report. And so we take the report as read and say that we brought them here now for them to be adopted by you, and to also say that in the report I had talked about it going out into the community and just going into effect from 1st of June. We've agreed now, we've decided to push it forward to 1st of July because we heard back from the Ministry of Conservation much earlier than anticipated. And so we'll be back to you again next month, sorry about that, but for us to adopt the reserves by law, and then everything will just go into effect 1st of July together as was being proposed. So that's just the only minor change in the report.
Okay, thanks, Timmy. Any questions of Timmy? Councillor Body.
Mr. Chairman, as the chairman of that very big committee of two, it's the only meeting I've ever been to where I've seconded myself, so that was interesting. We got a good range of submissions, and I think the ones to do with dogs off leashes, those that wanted certain areas kept clear were kept clear. My thanks to Timmy for what you went through at times when the systems weren't working. I was hand delivering you petitions, so thank you for that. Just had my fellow councillor has raised the litter in public places. We dealt with the likes of the op shops and the Salvation Armies. Could you just briefly explain what's now in the draft or in the final document?
And so in the final document now, we've made it clear that it is an offence to deposit material at a premises without the owner's permission. That does not necessarily mean that all op shops are now safe and free. If they put a sign out asking people to drop off materials in a box outside hours, then they cannot come back and say it is litter, because they've allowed that in that way. So there is that to be mindful of as well. But we have put in that. So where there is a clear express sign, and if they do find someone infringing it, that's something that could be taken up by compliance and dealt with.
Mr. Chairman, the other thing that came up with cats, and while no action was taken on it, I think Nigel made comment to us about local government, etc. It's becoming a real issue, and I think I just read something where one lady's got one cat, but 8 actually use her backyard as a bathroom, and it's something we really, as a community, should really be looking at. So we need to keep that in mind when we get to the next bylaw review.
It's worth mentioning that the bylaws will now go into a 10-year rotation.
So it'll be in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Okay, thanks, Timmy, for putting all that together. Do we have a recommendation up there? We'll change the date. July. Yep.
Thank you. Yes.
They notify them, and then we go into that process here. All right, Dave, I'll move it. Thank you. Councillor Body, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thanks, Timmy. 4.9, submission on the Waikato Regional Council's long-term plan. We have Tanya. Good afternoon, Tanya.
Good afternoon, Your Worship. Good afternoon, councillors. So Waikato Regional Council is currently out for consultation on their long-term plan, and their consultation process period closes at the end of the week. So this have put together a submission for you to consider, and with your approval, we'll pop it in or submit it on the WRC's long-term plan.
Very good, Tanya. And we might have a little addition. Come on. Councillor Kingy is ready and raring to go. If you don't mind, can you accept an addition at this stage?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, Your Worship. Oh, well, yep, following on from this morning's discussion, Tanya, if we're able to just, some supportive of all the points of the submission, but just adding in one specific one around encouraging WRC, or something along the lines of encouraging WRC to to efficiently, effectively, and preferably yesterday, put in place a response plan that will deal with any accidents that may occur on the state highway network as it relates to the lake. So specifically between Turangi and Taupō, and if there's a significant incident that impacts on the lake, there's a bit of a hole there at the moment with them. So a bit of direction, encouragement to WRC in that way would be awesome.
Absolutely.
But Kevin Taylor will have much better words than me.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with Councillor Kingi. It's not just a plan, but it's infrastructure. So it's all very well having a plan in a book on a shelf in Hamilton. When there's a truck falls off Bully Point into the lake, if they don't have the infrastructure, which we talked about this morning, here to respond immediately. So if we could really encourage them to do that, that would be helpful. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Yep. Councillor Mack.
Just on the public transport bit as well, that we're talking about a public transport bus between Turangi and Taupō, that, can we actually elaborate on this? Because to me that just sounds like we want a bus because it would be nice to have one. I don't actually think it is a public transport. It's an essential, as well as being public transport, it's an essential service.
Okay.
You know, we don't have opticians in Turangi. We don't have certain services that are what I would call your right, if you like, to get to. And if you don't have a car, you can't get there. So in Hamilton, where they might look at this and go, oh, it's a public bus, who cares? This is really more important than that to us, and it's a lifeline. So somehow we word it to say it's more than just a public bus.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, yeah, Councillor Westerman.
Just on the proposal 3 in the Lake Taupo Protection Project, is that strong enough wording in there just to reflect our position, which I think is pretty clear?
I wanted to stay relatively neutral on this one because, as you're aware, we've consulted on this one as well. So I didn't want it to be preemptive of every or anything like that. We can have a discussion around what you'd like, and we can.
I guess what we're really conscious of here is we don't want to predetermine your decision making because you're going to have a committee joint with WRC to make a specific decision on this point. So you have to go in with that with an open mind, and so stating a position here would potentially predetermine your position going into that discussion. So hence we wanted to keep it on the radar and alert WRC that we haven't forgotten about it, but not make a position because you'll be a decision maker on it.
Cool. Councillor Truman.
Yeah, sorry, and just on the discussion before with Tonganui and Councillor Taylor, just the fact that currently it's a 4-hour wait time if there's some sort of spill into the lake, and just that's not acceptable, or we don't find that acceptable. And if we have the infrastructure close by, we'll be able to respond locally faster than what they can respond to from north of Hamilton.
So just on that one, Tony, do you want to talk to us offline as to get those wordings right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll share something.
So it'll be a
with
combination of Councillor Kingi and Councillor Taylor and Kirsty's just what she's added there. So it's a rapid response that we needed to just spell it Bully Point or whatever. It's the machinery or whatever apparently comes from north of Hamilton at the moment, just too long.
Yep.
So that's a simple part of it. But if you can eloquently relate that into a submission, that would be appreciated. All right. Any other questions, councillors? Okay. So adopts the amended submission. You can just put amended in there, please, Shani. Thank you. Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Kingi, seconded by Councillor Truman. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Council's March performance report. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. So there's only 3 points that I'll raise in the covering report before I give to the team to take you through page by page. The first of those is proud to say that we've got 3/4 of our new SLT in place, although only half of us in the room today. So do want to acknowledge Andrew, it's his first council meeting here today, but he's been in the seat for I think this is the start of his 4th week. So I think anybody who remains longer than a month, we've got a fairly good job of keeping for a while, so that's a positive sign. Not least the fact that he was actually acting CEO last week whilst I was away and did a fantastic job as well, I think on week 3, so that's pretty significant. So so definitely acknowledge Andrew's role, and then obviously Julie Gardine, who's yet to join us but is I think about 2 or 3 weeks away, so we look forward to her joining us as well. So that's obviously been a significant process for us as an organisation, and one that we're still continuing with the next level of the change for the 3rd tiers and onwards from there. So so significant piece of work. The second piece I want to acknowledge, I talk in the report about the Town Centre Transformation Project, and just acknowledge the public meeting that a few of us attended on Friday night, and obviously the public interest in that project, which was evident from the 40 odd people that were present during that evening at the public meeting. I think what came out of that for me was that there's probably a need for us as council to hold public meetings like that for specific projects as we go forward, and that I think some of the participants in that room were as interested in other issues about rather than just traffic lights, which is what the meeting was about, but we're interested in getting information around CAB, the office buildings, through second bridges and other things, which obviously we do have the information and have been communicating with the public about, but obviously not in a place that they could understand that. So that's something I've taken away from that public meeting as an opportunity to communicate with our community slightly differently in that way, and something that we'll work with you, Your Worship, to progress over the next little while. The third point there I just want to point out is obviously next week you'll see in your diaries you've got 3 days put aside for long-term plan hearings in deliberations, or hopefully into deliberations as well. Obviously it's one of the more important things that you'll do over this triennium, and that's setting up your 10-year budget essentially in the direction for the community. For those who can't be there for the whole time, and I'd strongly encourage you to try and be, but we will be recording those submissions so that you will have access to them if you can't be there for every minute of every day. But again, I would want to encourage you to do everything that you can, and that it is the most significant thing that you'll do over this 3-year term. Really impressed with the level of submissions we've received, and obviously you've got those, and acknowledge that you're spending all weekend and nights at the moment reading through them, as are we as staff, and we're getting proposed responses through to you, so you'll get those as we go through the process. But just want to acknowledge obviously a heck of a lot of work for you reading them, and for our staff as well, and you would have seen that you were getting emails over the weekend from our teams collating those submissions, and I guess the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes that you might not otherwise see is significant, so I want to acknowledge the team on that. And Neil, I'll hand over to you, unless there's any questions, Your Worship.
Any questions there, the CEO?
Just one question for me, if you don't mind, just in relation to the submissions, and I'm probably about a third of the way through the bundle we've got. I don't have a life. Yeah, thank you. Some of them are raising questions, so can you just I'm new to this, talk me through the process we have for responding to that. So some of them are just straight, here's what I think, others have posed a question. What's the process there?
Yeah, so you'll hear on a case-by-case basis or a face-to-face basis from those submitters who want to be heard as well, and then there'll be a number of things that they'll raise in addition to what's in the paperwork to date. There will be a relatively generic answer that will be given to most of them, because some of them can be grouped quite easily, and if you think through the submissions you would have read, there's a whole lot around the Turangi Turangi Event Centre as an example. Obviously clearly they can get one response which will cover all of those submissions, but for any that have specific questions or more unique things that need to be answered, then we would put that into the response to those particular submissions. So you get to see those. We generally post your deliberation, so you'll hear the submissions, you'll then go through each one and deliberate and make a decision on each of them. Officers will go away and craft the responses, and then you'll get to see a copy of those before they go out.
Cool. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Welcome, Neil.
Yeah, good afternoon, councillors.
See you.
I've jumped into the hot seat here just to talk you through the financials. So I'm just going to go through the high level on the financials, then I'll jump into the investment activity. We'll then, different members of the team will talk to some of the other activities, and then I'll get back to the Treasury report, which is towards the end of the monthly performance report. So I'm starting off on page 89 there, just the dashboard report. Key things out of there, which is really unchanged from previous meetings, reports I should say, is the rates running on track as we would expect. Other operating revenue is significantly ahead of what was budgeted, and as you are aware, that's due to the funding from the CIP projects. And yeah, so CIP, the water and whai terrace, we were successful in receiving some funding from NZTA on that as well. So that's all wrapping up the extra 15 million favourable there, but predominantly that's 4.1 million relates to Three Waters, 6.8 on the TCTC and the Curvin Channel, and 650 on whai terrace. Operating expenditure as a whole is running pretty well okay there, so surplus is looking good. Probably just then move through to page 90, so that's just giving a high-level snapshot of where we are in terms of borrowings and capex. 173 on borrowing, that includes $20 million pre-funding of our May maturity. So the net borrowing effectively on that is 153. Reasonable amount of cash in there at the moment with rates and CIP funding and that coming through, which is kind of inflating the cash position a bit at the moment. So you'll see we've got some forecast information there as well. Capital expenditure, we've spent 30 million for the year so far, and that's across the range of both annual plan, Bellwave, and CIP projects. Although we don't have a reforecast on that, but we will be considerably less than that full year amount. Run through to page 91, so that just gives you more of your P&L breakdown there. So if we look at, I've explained the 15 million on the other operating revenue. If we look at fees and charges, we're up about 1.4 million on that, predominantly due to the resource and building consent area. There's 800,000 ahead, and solid waste additional fees as well due to the strong economy for 400,000 there. Finance revenue on a total return basis, 600,000 ahead. And other revenue, vested assets, 700, and the Lake Taupo Charitable Trust, 100,000 donation makes up the balance there. Probably just on the operating expenditure, pretty well running more or less on track there. One thing we do need to point out at this stage though is under other operating expenditure, it shows that we're 400,000 favourable. Due to some information we've received post this report being published, we're a little bit significantly behind actually on our water billing that's come through to us on some contract work, so we do need to accrue another $500,000 into there, which effectively will move that other operating expenditure to 100,000 over the budgeted amount at this point in time. So we're just working with the contractor at the moment to get those payments through, but they're a little bit behind. But that will be coming through as quick as we can get it. That's probably all I've got. Oh, sorry, and then I'll jump through to investments, which is the next page. And yeah, pretty well. I think I've covered that in the summary. We're 600 ahead on a total return basis there, so that portfolio is looking fine. And just on page 93, the reason for the orange there is that until the market moves, so until we get to the year-end position, the equities could go up or down, which is why we don't want to say that we will be 100% green. We're ahead at the moment, and we hope to be at the end of the year, but that's why there's still a little bit of an orange there. John, did you want democracy and planning?
Nick, democracy and planning.
Thank you. There were just two things I want to note here. The first is around the review of the district plan. Obviously the project's not a new one, it's been around for a little while now. Just wanted to let you know we've been in touch with officials at MFE who are doing all the drafting for the new legislation to replace the RMA. Funnily enough, their timeframes have slipped somewhat. They're now talking mid to late June for an exposure draft. What that means is that's the time when we'll sit down as a team and have a bit of a talk about where the direction of that new legislation's going and what implications does it have for the timing of that district plan work. So just wanted to give you a heads up around that. The second one, it's there as a green, but I think it's worth noting. It's around kaupapa kaitiaki. So this is the document that falls out of the settlement that Te Whārotoa had with the Crown. Essentially, it's a catchment document talking about their aspirations, in fact, our broader community aspirations for the catchment and its management over time. That's going to have future flow and implications for us as a local body in terms of the way we do our resource management planning, but also our local government planning as well. We're very early on in that process, so this is an initial draft which is meant to go out to stakeholders to start to elicit some feedback. At this point it's, I would caution you, I guess, and to say it's quite rough. There's still quite a lot of work which needs to be done in terms of shaping up its direction, but it's very much at a point where it's timely to go out and start those conversations with those broader stakeholders. So while formal consultation won't happen until February 22, so a little way off, there are definitely going to be lots of those public consultation conversations starting up with our stakeholders. So I guess just a heads up on that one. That's all I had on democracy and planning.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you. Actually, any questions of Neil too? No, you're fine, I think. No questions of Nick on that one? No. Any questions of Neil? Done the finances? Cool. Thank you, Neil. Who have we got next? Community Services. Scott.
Oh, you want to stay here? No, that's right, you can away.
I'll just hang around.
Welcome, Scott.
Welcome. So in terms of community services, I'll just talk about regulatory services. As you can see, operating income is not surprisingly up. I think forecasting here about $1 million up. And that's no surprise with the mainly building consent activity that's going on, but also resource consents are quite strong. On the other side, in terms of expenditure, with more work comes more costs in terms of particularly processing consents. At the moment we're using consultants relatively heavily to help us in that space, and that's mainly around the processing of building consents. So the real big pressure currently at the moment is building inspections. We're up 1,500 building inspections so far this year on the same time as last year, so that's significant. So we're pulling some of the processing team across into the inspection side and using consultants to help us in that space and keep our working days down. We had IONS here last month, which is generally a 2-yearly audit they come and do, and they spend 4 days. So every year it seems to get longer. 4 days with us going through everything in great detail. Out of that was a bit of a mixed bag of results, to be honest. They were pretty impressed with how we're handling in terms of our workloads, and probably one of the few councils around who are actually meeting timeframes at the moment, and probably particularly in the inspection space exceeding timeframes. So our general inspection rate's about 2 working days to get an inspection versus somewhere like Tauranga, you're sort of out to a month or 2 months sometimes for a building inspection. They did pick us up on a few things, as they always do, and that's what the purpose of audits are. But one of the outcomes is they will be looking to do a revisit in 12 months to us, and whether that's a face-to-face revisit or whether that's just an electronic catch-up with us in 12 months' time. What they're wanting to come back and look at is basically our training records and our competency assessments. Came as a bit of a surprise to us because they're exactly what we did last time IONS were here, and they're consistent with the other councils in our cluster. So we compared the work we're doing in that space with the other 12 councils we work closely with, and we're pretty much all doing the same thing, which has the other councils in the cluster group extremely worried because they're just about to have their audits too. So we're one of the first cabs with the ranks, so they get to learn a little bit from us. So We have gone back to Irons and responded in the initial response to tell them what our plan is. That's been signed off. So we've got basically 3 months to complete that, provide the evidence, and then they sign off our accreditation, which is a normal process. What is unusual is that revisit in 12 months. And I guess we're trying to get an understanding of whether that's a change from Irons in terms of how tough they're getting, or whether that's just we need to do more work in that space. So
what was that on, Scott? Training?
Yeah, so each of our officers has to have a full competency assessment done annually, and we also have to undertake an overall assessment of training needs for those staff. So those have all been completed and done to the same expectations as what we've done in the previous audits, but they've lifted the game, I guess, on us on that
So
space.
they're including consultants in on that as well?
They do, yep. So we have to do the same thing for consultants. So they were comfortable with where the consultants were sitting in terms of the work they do. They're separately audited, our consultants as well by Irons.
Yep.
But what they wanted to see, and the reason for the 12 months is it's going to take 12 months for us to complete the records to actually provide the evidence. So that's the main reason. It's not because they're worried that we're not doing the work correctly. They just acknowledge the fact that it's going to take 12 months for us to actually implement the changes, do them properly and fully, and then provide those details back to them.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Scott. Any questions, Scott? Councillor Jim? Body?
I notice here you've mentioned the consents done in 9 working days. What about any code of acceptance? Do they have the same time frame?
You mean the code of compliance certificate at the end, or a certificate of
Code
acceptance?
of certificate of works that may not have been consented but then goes back for acceptance.
Yeah, so a certificate of acceptance doesn't actually have a time frame. It's basically at council's discretion whether we choose to accept it or not. So the Building Act says a council may issue a certificate of acceptance if they're satisfied, but it's totally at our discretion if we accept it or not. So there's no time frames to sit with that.
It's just when you get round to do that job.
Oh, we don't leave them sit in the back shelf, of course, but quite often with those processes, because it's existing building work that's been done without a consent, there's quite a lot of backwards and forwards to actually prove that it actually complies with the building code. So sometimes they can give us a really good application and we can knock it out in a couple of days. Other times it may be going backwards and forwards for weeks until we actually are satisfied.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Okay. Have the dogs? Cool. Oh, sorry, Councillor Lynn?
Will we get an update as to the outcome of that audit request? So you've gone back to provide them with information and to ask the why. Will we get a report back as council?
Yeah, so as part of this, either as part of this monthly CO reporting, we can include it within that. We also report through to the Risk and Assurance Committee in more detail on that. But I think as we get a more full detailed response back from Irons, we'll be able to come back to you with more of a response about, we'll provide you with a full report and say these are all the matters that have been signed off and these are the matters that are outstanding, just to ensure transparency around that. And that doesn't need to be part of a formal council process. We can provide that at any stage. We're giving Gareth regular updates on that, and I'm quite happy to share that with the whole team.
Thank you.
Very good, Scott. Okay, are you doing the dog control and all that sort of thing?
No, I talk about the dogs. I think you'll find that's a red because we had one instance where it fell out of time. So it's because
two service requests.
Yeah.
Those dogs.
So they were addressed. It was just it fell out of the time. So we've.
Okay, Councillor Mac.
Can I just ask on that then? So you've got to get 100% within 24 hours in a year. Does anybody? I don't understand. 100% of anything is almost impossible in a year. Why is the target so high?
Well, exactly. So we've changed it for the next long-term plan. You'll see that down to 95% because you only need one to fall out and you failed.
Yeah.
So we've changed that target to 95%, which will flow through the LTP.
Aim for the top, John. Aim for the top. All right. Building consents. We've talked about that. Distributing agencies that report annually. It's what's that red for? Is that red or orange? The grants, yeah, orange. Okay.
So that's orange, and you'll know from our conversations previously that we're setting up a conversation for you with the grant agencies in the next little while.
All right, facilities, Scott. Afternoon.
Good afternoon. As you may see from the presentation, that we're pretty much on track as we would foresee for this financial year. operating revenue is up, or we're online for most of our projects. Throughout the year there's been significant raw material delays for a lot of these projects, as you may or not know. I can certainly speak on behalf of the private pool upgrades at the AC bars. A lot of the problems that we've had is around just literally sourcing the materials. Because obviously there's so much work being done in New Zealand at the moment. From income and user perspective across AC bars as well, I can tell you that comparative to 2019, we're approximately 30% down. However, a lot of our events seem to be either up or slightly over what they were before. I think a lot of that's to do with the bottlenecking of events that were put off due to COVID or postponed due to COVID. A lot of the activities such as Rock Wall had its best year in a decade, but yet the fitness suite is down. So, which I believe has a lot to do with online platforms and people, working out at home. But as you can see through the report, pretty much everything is on track. Mangakino was delayed, I believe, due to building consent. Other than that, I think we're all on track. Is there any questions?
When are the thermal pools going to be ready? Sorry.
I can't answer. So, don't shoot the messenger. But so I work very closely with the facilities team that are managing that project. And the last I heard was middle of May, which admittedly, we've heard that for the last 3 months. A lot of it is around sourcing the products. Part of it was around they made the wrong size pool to be fitted out of fiberglass, so that had to get sent back and remodelled. But all the pools are in. So at the moment, from now on, it's mainly about fitting the aesthetics around it. So the timber framings, the entranceways, the seating, the showers, but the pools themselves are in. So the last update I heard, which was this morning, was middle of May.
So it's the green light only relates to the financial side then?
Sorry?
The green light only relates to the financial side?
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, it's still on frame. It's still on frame for this financial year. So the green light would indicate that it needs to be done this financial year, which it still is on track to do. So it's financial and it's timeframes.
So when were they supposed to be completed?
This financial year.
Okay.
So they did, admittedly, they did keep shifting, extending it out when they thought it would be completed.
Yeah.
But their scope was that it had to be done this financial year.
Okay.
So it's met the target, but I think we initially thought it was going to be.
It was going to be in for my wedding anniversary, I think.
We'd hoped it to be January. And
I'll book a room for you. I'll book a room for you.
Right, Mangakino, Turangi Destination Park, good as gold. Thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you.
Water? Yeah. Honeymoon pools? Therefore, Mr. Dennis Lewis, water. Thank you, Dennis.
Filling in for Kevin this afternoon while he's on holiday. So, as Neil mentioned earlier, operating expenditures showing a little bit behind what was forecast, and that's primarily the contractor has been a bit tardy in putting forward claims, probably from about January, February through to March. That should come through later this month, and it'll appear in the April report that comes in May. Capital, so the performance report, so the performance measures, not a lot has changed there. Most of those in red, and this goes back to the question that Councillor Mack just mentioned earlier, that if you get one wrong for the year, then the whole year's non-compliant, and each of those non-compliance is identified in the report. Projects, I'm just having trouble with mine. So in terms of projects,
Councillor Mack?
we don't pay for the water. We pay for the treatment of the water.
So if you look at the urban scheme, and the target current annual rate loss is 160 that's the
Yep, that's correct. That's correct.
I haven't been looking at the figures too much, but is that going up, or is that been over and
The water loss is calculated annually. I think, I can't remember which workshop it was, but we did address the water loss specifically with Turangi at one of the workshops we had with council. The water renewals that we're currently doing and we've just extended will seek to address that water loss. So you should see a significant improvement than with the next water loss calculations. That's correct. Yes. Yes.
I don't know what the cost of that is, obviously, because I don't know how much we pay per litre. But to my mind, it's like, well, we're not really looking for that.
And that's what's informing our renewal, pipe renewal projects that we're undertaking at the moment. So as I said, we would expect to see far more improved water loss figures once this pipe renewal projects have been completed.
And not the labour, but obviously when we put these pipes down, like we're doing like into them, until we actually put the water through it, we don't know that that's where the water is going.
We have a good idea where the water leaks occurring through leak detection methods and also through volumetric studies of where the water's going and how much is being used, and that's why we're targeting the pipe network that we are.
When we bring this back online, when do we see a difference here?
I don't know when the next water loss calculation are due. I could certainly find that out for you.
Very good. Any other questions of Dennis?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Councillor Body.
In the past, Alan and Hannon's been a bit concerned, and probably Mr Ward as well, in regards to Water New Zealand's last year's attitude. Our year finished 30th of June last year. I think our annual report came out December time. And I notice on page 106 it refers to non-urgent call-outs, and they're saying that the data that was flagged as unreliable at Audit New Zealand, and they're working on a solution to this issue. Where are we with that one? It seemed a pedantic thing to delay a report.
I haven't managed to catch up yet. I'm not sure where we are with that. I need to find that out and I'll have to get back to you.
It just states non-urgent. It's not a, so it was not a priority. I think it says 7 days.
Sorry, if the question is about non-urgent call-out, so that is a call-out where you want to find out where your Toby is, as opposed to an urgent call-out where you don't have any water.
But that's why they're saying, the data was flagged as unreliable by Audit New Zealand.
Yes.
That's what I find interesting.
Yeah, so the data is actually, we're capturing data, it's just that we haven't been able to provide evidence that there's a thorough audit trail from collecting the call in the call centre through to the contractor, and the contractor doing the work and then going back.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Dennis, any of those other red lights you wanted to?
So just talking through some of the projects there, Acacia Bay is well underway. The red light's there because we don't expect it to finish until October. It was due to be completed in this financial year, but the work's well underway. Omuri, that project the funding for that project is now going into the upgrade of the treatment plant. Turahonga, that work's been ongoing for a couple of years now, and one of the local engineering firms is producing or fabricating the steel work that'll go into that that intake. Kinloch's tracking pretty much as planned. Tahara Ridge is drawing to a close. We expect to have the commissioning of that either this week or next week. And reticulation of 5 Mile Bay is almost complete as well.
Great.
And you just notice there in the commentary that 70% of those that have taken up for live connection, so it's quite a good response.
Very good. So 89 have,
Yep.
have 72%, yep.
Yep. That's
72.
That's a really good response.
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Thank you, Dennis.
Transport?
All right, transport, yep.
Yep, so operating expenditure is pretty much on track. CapEx, that CapEx includes the town centre Taupo and the curb and channel work, so it doesn't look like there's much happening there. We've got a reasonably small capital budget normally in transport. The renewals, you'll see an increase in the renewals. We've got all of the resurfacing works that are about to kick off tonight, I think it is, Norman Smith Street, and a number of other areas through town. Project-wise, LED lights, we're having some difficulty getting hold of LED lights. They're stuck on a ship somewhere between Italy and here. Whether they're the other side of the Suez Canal or whether they're sitting in a ship at either Auckland or Tauranga, we're not too sure just yet. But we've got a contractor ready to go to install them. We're just waiting for them to turn up. Unfortunately, that's a problem that New Zealand has in this part of the world.
So that's just a continuation of that project, isn't it?
It is a continuation of the project, and yeah, there's not many buttons we can push to speed up the delivery of those LED lights.
Yeah, cool. Very good. Thanks, Dennis. Wastewater?
Wastewater, you see wastewater is tracking a little bit in advance operational expenditure, and this is really to do with in relation to the CIP funding, where we've been lifting manholes. If you recall, through the water funding, we accelerated the SL-RAT program, and as a result of that, we've been increasing quite a few more manholes at this time than we planned to. Project-wise, Kinloch wastewater treatment plant upgrade, that's well underway now. Fair amount of construction activity going on around there, and they, as been mentioned earlier, obtaining materials has been a challenge, and contractors have been having to work quite smartly to locate materials or to make alternative sources of materials or alternative materials just to keep on track. At the moment, we're still on track to do the commissioning of that plant in November of this year.
Solid waste?
Solid waste, as Neil mentioned, we're ahead of where we expected to be in terms of income, and that's just been driven by the increase in material coming to the landfill from all of the activity that's happening around the district, and there's a slight increase there in expenditure over where we expected to be.
Is that any particular area there, Neil?
Yeah, that's due to price of emissions trading scheme, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So it's all related to that.
Cool.
Stormwater, just tracking a bit in advance there of our operating expenditure, and that's really to do with we've been doing CCTV work on our stormwater network, and where we find areas that need immediate attention, we're having to deal to those immediately, and that has just brought us ahead of where we're forecasting to be. Project-wise, we have installed 3 downstream defenders through the district. 2 of those funded through the Three Waters funding, so it was a little bit more than we'd anticipated. And there's just a red light on that Brentwood Gully, and so we're just going through some consultation before we get that underway.
Great, thanks very much, Dennis. Appreciate that detailed report there. Economic development, John.
Yeah, I'll just wrap up on that. So that's the reoccurring, if you see the operational expense, that's the reoccurring theme around the eyesights, which come this year end will be removed, but I have nothing else really to talk about in there.
Okay, All right, thanks, John. That's it, is it? Neil?
That's well, almost, not quite. We'll be quick on this next part. So that just leaves the Treasury report, and then there's the traffic light report after that. So I'll just whiz through the Treasury report there. Pretty well, everything's looking good there. There's only one red cross, so it's all the green ticks that they were looking for. So perhaps, because that first page is a summary, so I'll just step through the pages. Whoopsie, sorry, my computer's just jumped. I'll try that again. Yeah, so in the summary, the general and special funds there, you can see excluding TL, 92 million. Interest rates, maturity risk position is okay. Actual return to budget is down due to the markets. Borrowings 173 at the moment. We've got, as I alluded to before, 20 million of pre-funding, so 153 is true position, and TL fund 63 million, everything right there. So page 122 of that, just the only crosses there is just on the actual return versus budget. That's dollar return, so that's with the market's been down. Obviously percentage return there is everything's fine. The profile of which is the red bars in the top graph there, is everything's in the correct allocations there. Moving through to borrowings, that's your 173. You can see in terms of the dollars on the interest, bottom right graph, we're looking fine there, and our risk profile, we're at midpoints of policy in the bottom left graph there, so everything's trucking along nicely. Next page, TL, everything's within where it should be there, or in fact above in terms of returns, both cash return and total return. And the asset allocation is in the pie graph at the bottom, still rather conservative. Counterparty exposures, the final page there, page 125, and we're within all of the compliance limits there. So from a Treasury perspective, everything's compliant. I'll probably just take the traffic light report there, which is the CIP money, as read, unless there's any other executive that wants to talk to that, or if there's any questions on that report, we can try and answer them. But it's a fairly detailed description of where we're at in terms of those projects.
Any questions of those projects? Ones? See, you got any various questions on those? Or statements? No? All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Neil. Appreciate that. Any final questions on anything? Very detailed there. Okay. Thank you very much, Gareth, and your team this afternoon. Appreciate that. And there's a recommendation that we receive the information, the performance report. I move. Thanks, Councillor Park. Seconded by Councillor Mack. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Carried. What have we got next? Engagements. Council engagements for May, I presume. 21, 36. What have we got? We've got Zone 2 meeting on Friday. If anyone can attend, that's just up in Cambridge. I wasn't sure to traverse that a bit earlier. If anyone can attend. Yeah, those looking engagements. No changes to those, Shani, are there? No? Okay, all straightforward. No doubt, as has been mentioned earlier, the submissions, the big ones of your tribunal for the long-term plan, so it'd be great to see as many people there as possible. All right, there's all the dates and times. Can I have a mover for those to be accepted? Thank you, Councillor Rankin, seconded by Councillor Leonard. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Members' reports. 4.12. Councillor Williamson, anything to report? Anzac Day, we talked about that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, you wish you just two Anzac Day the charter parade and the on Sunday with the
Cool.
ceremony. Thank you.
Councillor Park?
Attended a meeting with Blue Light Taupō, just about strengthening that relationship in the youth portfolio space. Anzac Day parade, and also I've secured attendance at a conference, the National Emergency Management Conference in Wellington, as the Deputy Chair of the Waikato Joint Committee, so it's being paid for at the Waikato region level.
Right, that's coming up, is it? What? Oh,
It's on the 25th of May.
oh, great. Thank you for doing that. Councillor Taylor? Councillor Truman?
Yep, just we had the two Anzac ceremonies at Mangakino, very well attended.
Cool. Councillor Westman? Thank you. All good, John? Kylie?
I just wanted to formally make mention and congratulations to the Central Plateau Dairy Industry Award winners. I'm very fortunate to have such amazing people in our district.
Cool. Were they the local? Yep. Great. Well, that's great. I'll get that name off here. Councillor Kingy? Councillor Guy? All good? Councillor Body?
So, Councillor, I was standing beside those chairs, and there's certainly spare chairs all the way through that dawn ceremony. At the dawn, yeah.
Very good. Okay, thank you, councillors. We'll move the reports be accepted. Councillor Westman, Truman, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? I think that brings us to a close for the... Yep, so we could move that we move into confidence. So, for a couple of items there. Have a move, please. Thanks, Councillor Park, seconded by Councillor Williamson. All those in favour, please say aye.